I want to extend a huge welcome again to everyone literally around the world. And you know, we've got a live audience right here in Perth, and they're making enough noise for your testimony, for your challenge, and we're believing for great things to happen, because that's what happens when His word is declared. Can I hear an amen? There's two storms in the Bible. One is in Matthew 8, one is in Matthew 14, and I need to read them out to you to give you context, because here's a prophecy that does not need any confirmation because it's true. Everyone is going to go through storms. If you're not going through one right now, just keep living. If you're going through one right now, keep living. If you've just been through one, keep telling the world how good your God is no matter what you're going through. Could be a personal storm, could be a national storm, could be a family storm, could be a global storm. We've been going through a global pandemic for the last 14, 15 months. And yet in the middle of that, there's been incredible stories, amazing miracles, and yet there's personal storms. There's family storms. There's all sorts of challenges that we find ourselves in. There's two in the Bible, storms specifically, and I want to read them to you. Matthew 8 and Matthew 14. Here's the Matthew 8 storm. It goes like this. Now when He, Jesus, got into a boat, His disciples followed Him. Everyone say followed. His disciples followed Him, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat was covered with the waves. But He, Jesus, was asleep. Then His disciples came to Him and awoke Him, saying, Lord, save us. We're perishing. But He said to them, why are you so fearful, O you of little faith? Then He arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. So the men marveled, saying, who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey Him? Great story. Amazing. Thank God He's still the same yesterday, today, and forever. He can speak into any storm, calm any sea that is out of control in your life, whether it's an internal raging anger or desire, or whether it's an external fire that's coming against you. He's still the same. He can do it. Here's the Matthew 14 storm. Matthew 14, verse 22 to 33. Immediately Jesus made His disciples, everyone say made His disciples. He made His disciples get into the boat and go before Him to the other side while He sent the multitudes away. And when He had sent the multitudes away, He went up on the mountain by Himself to pray. Now when evening came, He was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw Him walking on the sea, they were troubled. That's a nice word for saying freaked out, terrified. They were troubled, saying, it is a ghost. And they cried out for fear. Fair enough. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer. It is I. Do not be afraid. And Peter answered Him and said, Lord, if it is You, command me to come to You on the water. So He said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid. And beginning to sink, he cried out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out His hand and caught him and said to him, O you of little faith. Same report card, different storm, same report card. Why did you doubt? And when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped Him, saying, truly, You are the Son of God. On the surface of it, storms are storms. It all sounds the same, but there's a big difference. There's two totally different storms at play here, and it's important we understand the difference because it could speak specifically to the storm you are in right now. Okay? The Matthew 8 storm, the disciples chose to get into the boat. They followed Him. In Matthew 14, Jesus made them get into the boat. There are some storms you're going to go through that are your own doing. You chose to get into the boat. You chose to go down that path. You chose a course of action that now you're in a storm. You're like, oh God. And it's okay because God's still there. He's in that storm. There's another storm where you had nothing to do with it. The storm came to you. You were made to get into a circumstance, a situation, and life does happen to the best of us. Life happens happens to all of us. And at the end of the day, whether you're in a Matthew 8 storm or a Matthew 14 storm, the great news is God is there for you in both. Thank God he's not just with us in the Matthew 14 storms, even the ones we mess up. He's so kind if we'd call upon his name. And he's in both storms. But I do want to say that if you're in a storm of your own doing, stop blaming God and everyone else. Life is so hard. No, you did it. And if you're in a Matthew 14 storm, don't blame yourself. Don't let the enemy condemn you with shame and thoughts as if it's on you because it must be the way. Because people do that. Storms happen, you're like, because of you, that's why that happened to your granddad. Or that's why that happened to your sister. That's why that happened to your business. That's why that happened to... No, don't wear what's not yours to wear. Here's the second difference between the Matthew 8 and 14 storm. The first storm, Matthew 8, the disciples are scared of the storm, which is fair enough. In the second storm, Matthew 14, they're scared of the ghost. Sometimes we're scared of the natural circumstances. Sometimes it's supernatural circumstances. It's things that just seem out of our control. See, the natural can bring fear, but the spiritual can bring real fear. The third difference, Jesus is asleep in the boat in Matthew 8, but he's walking on water in Matthew 14. But the good news is he's there. Some storms you're going to have to wake up the word, and other storms you're going to have to walk on the word. Some storms you're going to have to just trust him to calm them. Other storms you're going to have to walk out when he says come in the middle of them. And it doesn't really matter. The most important thing is that the word is near you. The word is in you. He's in your boat. He's on the sea. He's within your reach. He's within your grasp. But probably the fourth difference and the main difference, which is the real subject of what I want to share today, is the difference between Matthew 8 and 14 is in Matthew 8, Jesus calms the storm. He actually says, peace, be still. He rebuked the wind and the waves, and the storm stopped. In Matthew 14, it does not say that he did that. Don't read the story too fast and just assume because it's Jesus, all the storms he supernaturally stopped. In Matthew 14, here's what it says, that when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. It doesn't say how long the walk was. It's not like when Jesus rescued Peter, he calmed the wind and the waves. They might have had a conversation. They could have had a connect group. Who knows what they did out there? Let's talk about life. You know, the other 11 are freaking out in the boat. Doesn't say. Don't throw in what it's not saying. When they got, see, there's some storms that God will supernaturally stop, and the other storms that are just going to cease by the passing of time. And the difference is, we need to hold on to God in both. Whether it's holding on to God for the miracle you're believing for, or whether it's holding on to God to endure the circumstances you're facing. Because there's faith that shifts circumstance, and there's faith that endures them. They're both in Hebrew 11, and they're both faith. Hebrew 11 is made up of two halves. The amazing people who saw incredible things, and we go, wow, what faith. And then there are those who never saw what they were believing for, and God says the world was not worthy of them. Those are people of great faith too. Why? Because faith is not just the ability to calm the storm, but to outlast it. To endure it, to say, you know what, no matter what the devil throws at me, he will not stop my worship, he will not stop my allegiance, he'll not stop my hunger for God. Why? They're both faith. Because God doesn't just work in the calm, he also moves in the storm. And really what I want to talk about in the time we have left is 3 keys to outlast a Matthew 14 storm. You know why? When Pastor Mike got up earlier and he was praying, we, without fail, in every service around the world, and we will never stop, pray for God's supernatural act to absolutely shift mountains. The stories are crazy. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's able to do exceedingly abundantly above and beyond more than they could ask, think, or imagine. I love the story about the woman with the issue of blood, and she literally touches the hem of his garment, and a miracle happens then and there. That's who our God is. We have seen it time and time and time again, and yet the real heroes of faith aren't just the ones who saw the miracle. There are so many heroes who've gone through so many storms, and their relative didn't make it, or their business didn't make it, or their stuff didn't come the way they wanted. And guess what? They still love God. They're still in faith. They're still in the house of God. They still love Jesus. There takes a different kind of faith to win in a Matthew 14 storm, because you're not just allowing the circumstances to dictate your faith. Your faith is greater than them. And these people are amazing. They don't just soar over storms. Some of them just learn to surf on the storms. If there's going to be wind and waves, you might as well learn how to ride them. And not just moan about them, whinge about them, because it happens to all of us. So here's 3 keys to outlast a storm. I prefer soaring over surfing, but if you can't soar, at least surf. Big amen from Mike Humberstone there. Here's the first thing we do in a storm. Number 1, we wait with focus. In a Matthew 14 storm, you've got to learn to wait with focus. I would like every storm on the first thing Jesus say, calm, done. We don't have to waste another hour, another minute, another day. Why go through all that unnecessary stuff, God, when you can do it all? Joseph was supernaturally warned of 7 years of famine. I'd be like, Jesus, if you can warn me supernaturally, why don't you just provide for me supernaturally? Why make me save for 7 years all the extra reserves? Because I'm that sort of impatient Christian that would just like all the Matthew 8 stories. The Matthew 14 stories bother me, but here's what I know about Peter. Think about it. Waiting with focus means you can hear in the middle of the storm, because your ability to wait is not passing time. Like, what are you doing? I'm just waiting. Just waiting out the storm. Wait till this issue passes. Wait till I'm done with this thing. That's not waiting. Waiting, the word wait actually means focus. So when I say focus with focus, that means it's a refined focus. That's a real focus. Think about it. It's storms, there's wind. I mean, you look at the background behind me, it's crazy. In the middle of all of that, they hear Jesus. Can you hear Jesus in your storm? Or does God feel so silent when the world goes crazy? Peter was listening. 16 years ago, I was going through a real personal storm. But God in his kindness, I had an encounter with God, and I heard him in the storm. Go to Malaysia, leave your family, and start a church. I came probably from the mindset that it's only when in the peace that I hear God. Because, I even had verses like that, like be still and know that I'm God. But that still is not an external calm, it's an internal calm. And can you keep an internal calm when there's an external storm? You can hear God if your marriage is falling apart. You can hear God if your business is falling apart. You can hear God if your world is falling apart, because your walk with God transcends all of those things. And really, to wait with focus means I focus in the storm. I don't focus on the storm. I find the ability to not allow, what's the enemy of focus? Not the demonic, distraction. Anything that takes your eyes off what you're focusing on is what dilutes your focus. You've heard me talk about how the average human has an 8-second focus. In our world today, the average goldfish has a 9-second focus. We're losing to the goldfish. And that is a troubling stat. But nonetheless, we have to learn to focus. Some of you with online, it's hard to focus because you're just watching and you're like, oh, but learn to wait with focus and say, you know what, I'm going to focus on you. That's why the scripture says in Isaiah 40, verse 31, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. Those that focus on the Lord. People are like, I spend so much time in church, I still feel weak. You can spend time in the building and not focus on the Savior. They that focus on the Lord. That's why I'm just waiting on God. Well, what does that mean? I'm waiting with a focus. Here's what Jesus said in both storms. You heard it. Oh, you of little faith. Now, I used to feel really embarrassed to even hear that, because if Peter, who walked on water, had little faith, I don't want to know what he thinks of my faith. Non-existent, microscopic, barely visible faith. But he wasn't having a go at Peter's faith. He was having a go at Peter's focus. Because the word little does not mean small in size, it means small in time. Oh, you of momentary faith, you of fleeting faith, you of short-lived faith. Peter, your faith is great. See, you don't need Smith Wigglesworth faith. You don't need, John G. Lake faith. You can just have you faith. You just need to stay in faith long enough. Can you hold your faith long enough to see a miracle through? God, apparently you only need a mustard seed size of faith to move a mountain. So don't pray for greater faith in terms of size, but pray for focused faith. God, I want to stay in faith long enough. Psalm 37 verse 9 says, they that wait upon the Lord shall inherit the earth. So do you mean I just have to, and then the earth? No. Those that focus on the Lord long enough, there's an inheritance. Those that focus on the Lord long enough, there's a strength. Stay in faith. You might not be able to beat every storm, but you can outlive it. And what am I waiting on? What am I focusing on? I'm focusing on Jesus. Think about it. Look, in the two storms, look at what Jesus is doing. The first storm, he's sleeping. That doesn't sound like storm activity. The second storm, he's saying, be of good cheer. A British accent comes to mind when I hear that phrase. It's a storm. See, if you got a choice of where to focus in the storm, focus on the one who's at rest in the middle of it. You got lots of relatives, and half of them are freaking out, and half of them are calm. Focus on the calm ones. His two responses are sleep and be of good cheer. This is the storm Jesus. This is not picnic Jesus. This is not bless the little children Jesus. This isn't the multiply the loaves and fish Jesus. This is the storm Jesus. Storm Jesus has two postures. Asleep. See, I was asleep when Jemima was giving birth, and I thought that was very Christ-like of me. See, I better get back on track with this message. So, second point. You got to wait with focus. Number 2, this is the other way to outlast a Matthew 14, so you got to walk with focus. A Matthew 14 storm, you got to walk with focus. Verse 29 says this, so he said, come. And when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. Sometimes when we're in a storm, we're like, the last thing I need to do is walk. I just want to hide. I just want to cover myself. I just want to shrink back. Who needs an adventure in the middle of a storm? But if you're going to outlast a Matthew 14 storm, see, if it's a Matthew 8 storm, sure, because it's ending like that. This pandemic has gone on for a year and a bit. What if it goes on for another year and a bit? Are we just hiding in the boat until the storm passes? Peter has a story that no one else ever has, because he didn't just choose to wait out the storm, but to walk in the middle of it. So how long more are you waiting? You waiting for good weather? We were in New Zealand last week. There's no such thing as good weather. Just walk in the rain. Don't wait for the sunshine, it's not coming. If you're in London, pray for Auckland weather, because you've never seen the sun. So stop waiting in a personal sense. When I get healed, when I get delivered, when I get married, when I have kids, when God blesses me with this, just walk and learn to hear his voice and walk. People say, but is it a wise time to walk? Is it a wise time that we should meet as a church now and, put your nation in the blank there? Because is it wise? Well, let me ask you a question. When is a good time to walk on water? You tell me when the good time to walk on water is, and I'll listen. What, when it's perfectly calm? Wow, what a beautiful day. I feel safe walking on water. There's no such thing as a safe time to walk on water. So stop waiting for the external circumstances to line up before you take that step of faith. Some people have started businesses in the middle of this pandemic and made millions. They didn't wait for calm seas before they walked on water. What's the adventure? 16 years ago wasn't a good time for me. I'll tell you, I don't know when a good time was, but it wasn't a good time. When is a good time to start a walk of faith? When is a good time to say, you know what, this is falling apart, but God, I wait with focus, but I want to walk with focus. See, the mistake we make is to think that the Christian life has seasons of good and bad or easy and hard. I got great news for you. The Christian life isn't difficult. It's impossible. All the time. When's a good time to forgive your enemy? When's a good time to sacrifice? Lord, I hope the bonus comes in around miracle offering so that it just stop using timing as the reason you're dying in the boat. In a Matthew 14 storm, it could go for 5 years. What are you just going to sit there the whole time? Peter has a story because he didn't just wait with focus, he walked with focus. People are like, well, I'll just wait till the vaccine is right around the world and no one is dying, and then I'll go to church again. You might be one of those people in those cities. I don't want to discourage you. I mean, everyone's got their own journey. But don't wait for perfect weather to walk again. Yeah, but Pastor, there's hundreds of thousands currently infected with this virus. Yeah, but there's 8 billion people infected with a thing called sin. We're not sure about the vaccine to the former, but we have the vaccine to the latter. It's the blood of Jesus that still cleanses, it still washes. There's a revival that we can have even in the middle of a pandemic, even in the middle of a storm. We can see supernatural things because we don't just wait this thing out with focus, we walk through it with focus. Thank God this season we didn't just wait out the pandemic. Not only have songs been written and books been written and curriculum been written and services been added and campuses been started, countries been added. It's hardly storm type behavior. Why? Because Jesus is in the storm in Matthew 8 and in Matthew 14. There's testimonies, there's incredible things still happening. Someone says, can you be an assistant connect leader? No, it's not time. Well, when exactly will it be time? What I love about all our carriers globally, there's no perfect time for any of them. Trust me, they're all going through some storm. And yet they still keep saying yes to Jesus. Lord, if that's you, bid me to come. See, here's the thing. Well, what if I fall? Jesus will pick you up. You have peace in a storm when you don't just hear Jesus in the storm, but when you can actually see Jesus in the storm. The wind is still crazy. The thunder and the lightning is still real. It hasn't stopped, and it shows no sign of stopping. Oh, there's timeout. Yes, there's breaks. I get all of that. But when you can not only hear his voice in the storm, but you can see him in the middle of it, you'll start to walk. You'll start to do things. And I said walk with focus. Peter took a step, and he started walking. And he started walking. And as he walked, he then realized, oh no, there's wind. There's waves. And he looked at Jesus in the middle of the storm, but then other things got his attention. It's one thing to walk with God, it's another thing to walk with focus with God. Don't make the mistake of just saying, God, I'm going for an adventure. Keep your eyes on him. And people go through all sorts of challenges. I know my dad is currently in hospital watching this right now. And that's me because it's my storm. But then everyone has their own storm. People have lost loved ones. People have gone through crisis and tragedy and hurt and breakdown and all sorts of stuff. And just using the storm that I can relate to, you want to learn as much and know as much and read as much. And I thank God for some of the greatest medical people we've got ever. And it's just such a humbling honor to be blessed by such incredible people and surrounded by them. And everybody does their job, but I have to make a choice at the end of the day. For me, okay, I'm going to keep my eye on Jesus, even though, otherwise this blood count happens and I feel depressed, or this thing goes good and I feel excited. And suddenly you get good news, suddenly you get bad news, suddenly this works. You can't wait for perfect weather. You have to learn to walk with a focus and say, Jesus, I keep my eyes on you no matter what, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether it's somewhere in between. Oh, every day I'm believing for a Matthew 8 ending, but I want a Matthew 14 endurance. Every day I'm believing that Jesus, as I wake up the word, you would speak and you would do amazing things. But it doesn't matter how this plays out. All that matters is I walk with a focus and I keep my eyes on the one who's the same. And finally, we don't just wait with focus and we don't just walk toward him with focus, we worship with focus. This is what it says in verse 33. Those who were in the boat came and worshiped him. Everybody say worship. They worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. The enemy doesn't want you just distracted by the wind and waves. He doesn't just want you drifting helplessly by your circumstance. If he can, he would actually like you to start complaining about the weather. It's one thing to be scared, it's another thing to start whinging and infecting everybody else with your fear. And that's called demonic worship, where I start elevating the God of circumstance and the God of trials and the God of storms. But what would it be like if in the middle of a storm we can talk about how good God is? Because I wait with a focus, I walk with a focus, and I can even worship. I can even worship with a focus. Do you know, Scripture says in John that God is looking for worshipers who worship Him in spirit and in truth. He's not looking for singers. He's not looking for musicians. He's looking for worshipers. God is not an egomaniac needing worship like it's a currency that feeds his soul. But he knows that if you and I can worship in the middle of a storm, if you and I can worship in the middle of a crisis, if you and I in the middle of grief, in the middle of pain, in the middle of challenge, in the middle of joy, there's births, there's deaths, there's weddings, there's divorces, there's new initiatives, there's breakdowns, there's everything. And in all things, I believe we've been talking about this, in everything, in every circumstance, give thanks to God. Fix your eyes on things which are pure and lovely. Dwell on those things. Fix your mind on Him. Wait on Him. Walk toward Him. And you know, what does it mean to worship with focus? Focus is the theme, in case you haven't worked it out. But to focus, to worship with focus means I don't just wait on Him, and I don't just take my steps of obedience toward Him. But even when I worship, I don't know about you, but when I worship, sometimes I get 8 seconds into the song and circumstances will still bombard me. The fear will still infect me. You know, what would it be like if I learned to just worship? Oh, there's still wind, there's still waves, there's still storms, there's still lightning, there's still thunder, but He's there. I believe right now around the world, wherever you are, you can actually worship Him with focus. So one of the reasons I close my eyes in worship is not because I don't want to see anything, but I don't want to be distracted by other things. It's not a religious thing. It's turn your eyes upon Jesus. To worship with focus, to look full in His wonderful face, and the things of the earth, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. That's what it means to worship with focus. Come on, right where you are, turn your eyes. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Look full in His wonderful face. Worship with focus, worship with focus. And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the eyes. He loves you. Of His glory. He knows you. Elevate your vision above the storm and sing, turn your eyes upon Jesus. Turn your eyes. Come on, right now. All over the world, we look full in His wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of His glory and grace. I wonder if you could just close your eyes for a moment and just Sense the presence of God right where you are. Right where you are. Right where you are. Pay sensitive affection and attention to His presence right now around you. He surrounds you.